We are going to transition now to the 2024 cyber threats to local businesses in general, and 2025 predictions that are coming up. Is Felix Vila on? Better yet, Felix, have I actually been able to give you the power to unmute? Probably not. Give me 1 second, guys. And I'm going to
Can you hear me?
liven his mic. Yep, there you are. Felix, I see you as well.
Great.
Thank you for jumping on and joining us. We are at the tail end of our multi-session exercise. I'm going to spotlight you so everyone can see you as I can, and then we will jump right in. I guess you know what we probably should do. Not everyone here knows you like I know you. Can you spend a second talking about the CISA organization, who they are, and what you do for them?
Sure, no problem, James. So first of all, thank you for having me.
Sure.
I've listened to some talks so far, pretty insightful. CISA as an agency, we definitely, are here to work with partners, similar to organizations you just had speak earlier today. But yeah, not too many people have heard of CISA before. It is the youngest agency under the Department of Homeland Security umbrella. It's been around for about 5 years. And so because of that, we work closely with other agencies such as FEMA, TSA, FBI, even NSA, etc. And our mission is pretty straightforward. We're just here to help critical infrastructure owners protect against cybersecurity threats for today, and then also those that are evolving and in future threats. And so we work with critical infrastructure owners. However, we also work with those that support them. So a lot of times, let's say if you think of a law firm, for example, you might not see them as being critical infrastructure. If you look at the DHS sectors that are identified, you don't see law in their law firms. However, if they're client-based, it is CI focused, then we definitely can work with them. And so we understand they're part of just that network that helps overall have citizens get critical services that they use every day, whether it's education through K through 12 organizations, schools, let's say water, wastewater organizations, electrical, natural oil, gas, etc. Yeah, that's who we're here to help and work with. So as an advisor, quickly, let me just kind of recap what I do in my role, like on an everyday basis, is I help these CI owners identify that risk that they're facing from a cybersecurity side. And I help them create strategies to better make themselves more resilient, under that understanding that there's going to be no silver bullet when it comes to cybersecurity. There's no special framework, anything that's going to give you the key to protect yourself against everything. But we also understand that there is value in having a plan. And so I work closely with CISOs, from organizations of all shapes and sizes to help come up with ways that they can better protect themselves or at least be more resilient should they go through a cyber incident. Um, Also, we do have some national programs, and those are invite only. So, for example, some of those could be a new one that just came out recently, Cyber Sentry, where we take a more proactive and involved approach of working with critical infrastructure owners. Um, However, to get to that level, we work at the regional level first, to make sure that at least there's some sort of minimum cybersecurity posture that these CI organizations have. Um, Other than that, all my stakeholders I work with, I'm really attentive, and listening to their needs. Um, Obviously, working with them gives me insight into how we can come up with new resources and services to provide to these CI owners so they can be better prepared for future evolving threats. And so, yeah, I let the mothership know, if you will, of what we're seeing down in the ground level. And that way, again, as we get more funding and we grow as an agency, we can better serve the stakeholders that we work with.
Homeland Security created CISA a long time ago. It was 2007, not that long ago, but a while back. I don't remember CISA being in the spotlight till post-COVID era when ransomware and things really kind of went rampant. How long have you been with the CISA organization?
So quickly on that, CISA, it was known as a different agency prior to 2018, 2017 timeframe. It was actually a separate department under Department of Homeland Security, but officially the agency was adopted and created in 2018. I've been with CISA for about a year and a half now. Um, Funny how I ended up coming on board with CISA was I was actually one of their stakeholders before joining the agency. I was actually on the local government side. And so I had always worked federal before. So whether it was federal agency like the Veterans Affairs, or let's say I worked under DoD through the military, or even working private defense industry and Raytheon, I always had that leaning towards the federal side of practices, et cetera. It wasn't until I worked local government in 2018, coincidentally, that I actually heard about CISA. I worked with them. I discovered the way I worked, the way I was used to working on the federal side was similar to what CISA was pushing. We would like everybody to adopt something like the cybersecurity framework and have like a very detailed and granular way of defining their cyber programs. But we also understand that that's just not realistic, right? Based on resources, it may be devices that they run, citizen services that they offer, all of that. And so because of that, yeah, there's different ways that you can use those federal type way of workings and protecting systems and make them adaptable to, like in this case, small businesses. I think that's the core group here. Yeah, all in all, that's how I met CISA, trying to come up with ways to help create a program at the local government level. And yeah, now I'm on board.
That is interesting how you became a part of that org. I did not know the separation of that 2018 milestone. I remember it being written in, but I was unaware that changed the approach that the CISA took. We were going to talk a bit about 2024. Coming into 2024. The outlook on the year was really that the BEC, or business email compromise, was going to be fast on the rise. Ransomware was not going to fall apart, but was going to decrease. Why were we thinking it was going that route, and did we see that pattern take place?
When it comes to predictions, that's something that's really hard to do when you don't have the
Sure.
data to get a clear idea of what's actually happening. I think for the most part, I think you mentioned in 2020, that's when CISA really got the spotlight based on, a lot of the workforce going remote and just changing the way, business processes, and they lean more on digital type of tools, and just things like that overall. Um, and I think after 2020 and that transition maybe hit a little bit of a high point in 2022 around that time frame in 2023, people I felt maybe started getting a little bit comfortable in that, they took about 1 or 2 years or three to transform into a digital workforce, and now they're used to, Teams meetings and things like that. That
Hmm.
wasn't as prevalent before,
Hmm.
and so it came a little bit of like relaxation time and maybe like maybe comfort. However, the thing is, if you look at a lot of just data or charting that they do of incidents as compared to time, they're all still going up and to the right. And so really incidents haven't really stopped or maybe gone anywhere. They've been as prevalent as before. And overall, I think people just, again, understanding what ransomware is from all types of, departments that might be in their backgrounds and business email compromise. I think they just kind of lost oversight that it's still continuing. It's not really stopping. Yeah, if anything, it's just continuing to just increase in number.
Yeah, I've had a theory that we would see some level of decrease of ransomware, just because I feel the government's intervention on trying to stop that matured. Just naturally, it evolved to maturing to try to put a stop to them. But we did, at least in our world at Center, we did see a dramatic increase in the frequency of business email compromise. That was rather. I know they declared it as a prediction, but we were surprised that it became the more popular flavor of attack. Mid-year, we talked a little bit in a previous session about the CrowdStrike issue, where the patch brought everybody down. Just recently on NBC, they were talking to a group that was saying everyone was feeling like it was a cyber attack. We thought it was a cyber attack, but it wasn't. Regardless, did everyone's got to react as if it was? Did y'all get engaged on that?
So we did. We have a specific department that works with stakeholders on that level, that national type of scale. It's the JCDC, so the Joint Cyber Defense Collaborative, and so the way they work is similar to us advisors that are assigned a specific geographical region across the nation. For example, I focus mostly on the West Texas, Southern New Mexico area. And so a lot of my stakeholders are mostly involved with oil, natural gas, agriculture. those type of
Mhm.
stakeholders. Joint Cyber Defense Collaborative focuses on those organizations that have a national and even worldwide impact. So we can add maybe like the Google to that. The Google's, the Amazon, CrowdStrike, for example, is one of their partners. And so definitely that department was communicating, helping spread the message into what was actually occurring. However, when it comes to JCDC partnerships and just CISO partnerships in general, that's one thing that we really try to make clear is if there's an issue and it involves, again, one of our partners, we have them take the lead in communicating, what's actually happening, giving clarity to the situation. Obviously, if the agency has any supporting information or anything that can help the situation, they vet that through that organization so they can have like a cohesive or well partnered communication plan going forward. But yeah, definitely, James, our JCDC department was, working with CrowdStrike and just making sure that this incident wasn't, maybe larger or more malicious, even though it had a great impact than what it came out to be. Unfortunately, it was still a great issue, and it definitely was all over the world news. But again, they helped on just making sure that event was well identified and also communicated as in whatever channels they could to put that messaging out.
Felix, are you a conspiracy guy? Do you like conspiracies?
They're entertaining. They are fun to listen to. But no, I'm not a conspiracy guy.
I might be. I I enjoy the conspiracy for the entertainment of it. Kind of what you were just saying. I may not dive in with a full belief, but I hear these news stories now, and I'm the first of at least my circles of friends to be a skeptic. Where I'm going, no, they were attacked. This is an attack for sure. They don't want to announce it. This is a made up thing. How often do y'all run into that? You don't need to give specifics, but are the headlines often a head fake to the reality of what went on?
I I get that asked pretty often about everything, especially local type of incidents that occur, mostly because
Right?
I am involved in a lot of them. So that's I'll start there. That's one question I get asked pretty often by stakeholders is if I'm going through an incident and it's exceeded my ability to respond to it, um, who do I call first if I do want to let the federal side know what's going on? Do I
Yep.
call the FBI? Do I call CISA? Who do I call? Um, Really, it doesn't matter. Whoever you call, more than likely we're going to be communicating on the incident and trying to help, the situation. Um, Knowing full well that the FBI, their priorities are going to be different from mine. So they focus on finding out who the bad guy is, arresting that person, and bringing them to justice. Well, my end is going to be focused on keeping that critical asset up and running for the citizens. Obviously, keeping lives and monetary loss up in mind. And so, yeah, when we have incidents, I get asked like, hey, did something really happen or not? Or what information am I missing? What are you not telling me? Really, James, that's one of those things where, at least the incidents I've been involved in, there really is no smoke screen. And really our focus is just getting to the basics of helping those stakeholders we work with have their critical services running, delivering those services. If anything, suspicious or let's say there's any information that we come across that we feel needs to be shared with that victim, yeah, we definitely have protocols in place to let them know. But then it's up to that organization whether they want to share that information or not. So it's one of those things where it's really up to the victim to do what they will with that information, not up to to us, the agency helping them.
Yep. That's not helping me, Felix. I'm going to be a bigger conspiracy theorist reading between the lines on some of those. Now I'm going to start sending you articles going, I know what happened here. So I hope you find some humor in that. I can tell that there's some times where I think you read it, you go, honestly, for the better good of the public, it's probably best we don't overshare when they're just in the fact finding area. But the ones that come out, 4 months ago, it was recognized or announced that so and so had one. Here's the feedback they gave us. Who did this investigation really? So funny you worded it that way. It was a good answer. I look at back to some of the early days, like Colonial Pipeline, when they were hit. we haven't had an attack like that or JBS Foods that's jeopardized how the world's going to price certain goods in a while. Thank goodness. When you look at that, what industry or segment are you worried about most? I'll tell you just to throw it out there. Our world, we're worried about manufacturing most. They seem to be slow to get, as a whole, not individuals, but as a whole, to get caught up to minimum standards. I've had some of peers in my company tell me healthcare is way behind. Is there an industry in general that you're worried about more than another?
So we do focus on some industries more than others, and that actually changes over time, depending on what the agency, what data basically they're seeing from incidents they respond to, or even services that are requested. So right now, not surprisingly, we have four sectors identified, which one of them is elections infrastructure.
Okay.
Second is healthcare, public health industry,
Yep.
also K through 12 education, and then water, wastewater. Next year, that's looking obviously like it's going to change. Hopefully, after the debris has settled on the whole election process, which I haven't seen any incidents in my areas. I think overall through the agency, there hasn't been anything that causes concern. But next year, that's probably going to change. And so one of those industries that's going to look to maybe take some of that attention from us is going to be agriculture. Really looking into those food supply chains, how technology is being used, how it's being implemented. A lot of those businesses, especially in the South New Mexico area, West Texas areas, have been family owned for decades. And so, there's some basic practices that they should consider maybe having in place before they start getting targeted for whatever reason by malicious actors.
Let's pivot to the future a little bit. Every year, I feel like some of the same things are on some of the predictions. So I'm going to hit on a couple of those because they're humorous to me. I'm curious though about your opinion. Um, but I have to ask, with the evolution we just seen the last 3 or 4 months in ransomware and how they're going about attacking to get in, do you think we're just scratching at the surface with AI and other tools, or have we seen it all?
It's definitely an evolving threat landscape. So just this year, the National Cyber Director put out a report based on trends that they're seeing, and also they have an outlook into the next year. That's a great report. I recommend you look into it. Basically, it's a first report of its kind to ever be put out. It's meant for it to be looked over by Congress and the president. And so it really helps to kind of set the baseline of what agencies like CISA and responders like the FBI, et cetera, will need maybe resources in as these threats kind of change over time. And so I'll start off with AI. That definitely was talked about in that report. Um, and a lot of it aligns with what my personal thoughts. So, anyways, with AI, it's one of those things that's being explored, I think, still as an offensive tool, but also defensive. And so it's going to be interesting to see how both of offense and defense cybersecurity players are kind of tapping into it to kind of outdo each other. Definitely, probably speed will play into that. So automation um, will be implemented, and so how quickly will defenders be able to also set in like playbooks, automatic playbooks, and things like that already? That's already being used. However, again, with AI, that'll probably just speed up the whole process.
Our internal terminology leverages offensive and defensive security strategies as well for the group. Will you do a quick definition of the two? Is that
Can
is
you
that what
repeat
you were
that again?
referring to just
Sorry.
now? The offensive strategy and defensive strategy of security? Is that something y'all use internally?
That is one of the terms we use. So offensive security with us, we usually mean that to be on the more like the attacker side, right? So that's, let's say if you're doing a penetration test on your systems, or just finding vulnerabilities, those type of tactics. We're on the defensive side, we're working more of the usual teams looking to defend, what controls can they implement, how are they going to respond to incidents. So that's mainly what I mean by those terms.
Perfect. We've been using it. I thought well, my bad, Felix. I thought we were the same on this term. We're using it for the preventative measures around like EDR and SIM type technologies that are scouring the environment using machine learning and behavior changes to capture bad actors in the act as offensive, and things like backups, DR plans as more defensive. How are we going to restore in the event that things fail? And I've enjoyed having those conversations probably more than any other these last 4 years with our customer base, talking about how do you balance your investment in security. Well, we got to have a robust defensive strategy. Defense wins championships. Then how do we put little things in offense to make sure that we reduce that blast radius so we don't get hit too hard? I got a question that just came in. I want to hit on it, and then I'm going to give you a couple of those normal predictors we hear. Just give me a little quick thumbs up, thumbs down. Is that really something we need to worry about? Tamara just asked a good one, though. She said, at what point or when should someone engage CISA?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You don't have to actually engage with CISA. I'll start with that. That is, it's up to you. It's a choice whether you want to let us know about, let's say, an incident or some sort of help with our services we provide, and how we can help you again come up with that cyber security strategy. So, let me start off with I guess the most like obvious time when somebody thinks of CISA, which is when they're going through an incident. Yeah, like I mentioned, you don't have to let us know about it. You don't have to contact us. However, during an incident, that's something that I actually like to ask stakeholders I work with. Whenever I first meet them, I ask them, if you're going through an incident, and again, this incident exceeded your organization's ability to respond to it at an acceptable level that you feel that is, who do you call first? Do you call CISA? Do you call the FBI? Do you call your legal team, or do you call your cyber insurance? And so it's a little bit of a blanket statement. I understand everybody, is a different situation. But for the most part, I always recommend always talk to your legal team first before reaching out to federal agency, or maybe any third partners or customers, etc. Always talk to your legal team first. Let them know the situation. Let them know what you think the impact is at the moment, and then they can help you, give you some information and guide you through next steps you can take. After that, more than likely, if you do have something like cyber insurance, definitely engaging with them is probably a good idea. After that, let's say now you do want to reach out to federal agencies. This point, you're probably going to start an investigation depending on the impact. So then reach out to the FBI, like I said. Usually we're going to be working together, communicating as we go through an incident. We'll be talking to your incident response team, your cyber insurance, your legal team, etc., to get a good scope about what the impact could be. But then when you do, talk to CISO, there's a couple of different things that we need you to know about before contacting us, and what information you're going to share with us. And then it also varies by the type of industry you're in. So again, James, I don't want to make this a long-winded answer, but I'll go a little bit into the details of these are kind of the things that we discuss when we create your cybersecurity strategy. Part of that is your incident response plan. So anyways, first thing I'm probably going to ask you is, what is the traffic light protocol designation you want to give on that, you want to put or label on that information that you're going to tell me? That's important because that pretty much puts restrictions around the information that you're going to let me know. And so just like traffic lights, we have green, we have amber, we have and red, but then we also have amber strict. And pretty much what all those mean is that if something's green, then it's information that will be shared more than likely with other partners we work with, whether they're public or private entities. If it's amber, we're going to keep that information only with trusted partners. So let's say you're working with local government and you work with the MSISAC or the HISAC, let's say you're a healthcare industry, we're probably going to share that information with them. Now, if it's amber strict, that information only stays with our agency. And then finally, if it's red, that's information that's only shared with very specific people within the agency. And so, that's something, James, that's a little bit kind of, if you haven't heard of that before, it's a little bit difficult to process. It sounds simple enough, but yet it can get complicated. If you're under duress and the fog of war is real during an incident, right? That's a real thing, and you have to make those decisions. Yeah, that's what I would ask you. How do you want to protect this information you're sharing with me? At that point, then depending on the circumstance, who's being affected, then we can talk about ways that the agency can help you. If it turns out to be a small impact type of incident, then more than likely, we'll just take that as just information to get a better understanding of the landscape of what's going on, threat landscape for the area. But let's say it's a high impact service that's causing issues, then we do have an incident response team in the DC area. That's one of our programs that's available to help. So again, James, that's kind of what it would look like at a very high level, should you work with CISA during an incident. Now, let's say you work with CISA where we're intended to really be most effective in, which is the pre-incident or left of boom part of an incident. That's really where I would say we were kind of made to kind of work with critical infrastructure stakeholders. Really, we just want to make you more prepared, more resilient. And to do that, we really focus on identifying risk. We help you do that. So we do that through assessments. There are different tiers. We have introductory, beginner type of tier assessments, up to intermediate and advanced. And each one is more granular and more specific into what we're looking for, how you're running your program. But keep in mind, we're like a non-regulatory, we're not an auditing agency. And it's really, in reality, you're just assessing yourself. We're just helping you do that based on the tools that we have. And so once you take assessments, for example, then we help that we help that to what things you can prioritize, what areas of maybe improvement you might want to highlight for your specific program. And so yeah, these engagements definitely could take months to just give you a good create that plan and that strategy for your organization. And so that's where we would prefer. That's where I prefer to meet my stakeholders first, right? On the pre-incident part of life cycle, have you be prepared rather than during the incident. And so yeah, I'd say those are the two most common ways you can engage with CISA. Again, taking advantage of these resources, which I have to say are no cost. They're federally funded. Or during the incident where again it gets a little bit more complicated into what we can actually do at that point.
That was good. You mentioned you said some details. You thought you might get long-winded. That was highly relevant, though. So the theory there that I'm hearing actually resonates with some of the earlier classes that we had. If you haven't sat down and done a tabletop or an incident response plan, you need to. But heck, if you're in a critical industry and you haven't done it, you're behind. Maybe you're behind in general, but you're way behind if you haven't done that and you're in one of those 16 critical industries named. That was perfect. So 2025 comes, there's going to be 30,000 blogs written by everybody who thinks they know about all the things coming to cybersecurity. One of them I've been seeing already come to the surface is with everything going on, the investments into all these security tools is becoming a waste. If ransomware can disable EDR, why buy it? If ransomware can circumnavigate MFA, why practice it? So what are your thoughts there? Are we going to quit doing preventative measures?
Yeah, that's again, I have to go back with there being no silver bullet in cybersecurity. It's really how to predict. Well, I guess the more things change, the more kind of things stay the same as well. So, as tactics change, and really just on the defending side, programs implement controls and even policies, procedures, et cetera, to be more resilient. I think what sometimes gets lost is again not having a good, well-tailored plan for your organization to help you protect against whatever incidences are going to be. So, for example, I work with stakeholders that could be a one-person IT shop, and some that have like hundreds of IT personnel and dedicated cyber employees. But that weakness always kind of seems to be that they don't have good oversight or procedures or plans or even just attention or awareness into how they can be a victim to these cyber threats. And so a lot of times, especially in the headlines, you mostly hear about the cyber incidents that have the biggest impact, what's going to be more like shock news, etc. And so organizations feel, because they're not a large business, that they're not going to be targeted or a victim to a cyber incident. And so because of that, again, they just don't really put too much attention into their cybersecurity efforts. But that's really not the case, James, as I'm sure you're very familiar with that, and those customers that you have. These bad guys don't really care who 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 they're targeting, right? If you have vulnerabilities that are internet facing, they're just going to take advantage of that. And then whether they have some sort of tactic, let's say deploying ransomware, and it's successful, then they can make money whether you pay the ransom. Maybe you don't want to pay the ransom, then they'll just put your data for sale on the dark web. Either way, more than likely they're going to get paid. That's why ransom payouts keep increasing over time. I think about 2 years ago, the average ransom pay was about $65,000. I just heard a couple of months ago that this year it looks to be trending at about $2.5 million. So business is good, right? It's working. And so I just think if organizations, regardless of what sector they're in, or what service they're providing, if they just are mindful of basic cybersecurity practices to start off with, I think regardless of what's changing around them, they'll be in a better place than they might be now.
Yeah, good answer. I'm a similar boat. I believe that every business needs to do an assessment on what that's really going to be for, like, what does an outage really look like, what industry they're in, who their stakeholders are, and how much they're willing to put up with cleaning it up. And then just making a judgment decision. Forget the data, forget the secrets. Those are all going to get known eventually. How long are you willing to put up with it? Ruth asked a question. She asked if CISA will do an assessment for a small organization. Do y'all have an assessment program that comes in and does that left to boom with small business?
James, we do. Yeah, Ruth, definitely we do have assessments for small organizations. Again, the only qualifying factor is if you're supporting critical infrastructure, or if you're critical infrastructure, yourself, the organization. If you have any questions, just send me an email, and yeah, we can figure that out pretty quickly. One of the things that we also focus on, whether you support critical infrastructure, is because we understand, that risk your third parties have, those that you work with, those partners that you engage with, that risk they have is more than likely gonna percolate to you, and so you'll inherit the risk, right? We actually have an assessment. It's called the External Dependencies Management Assessment, which is about a 3 to 4 hour deep dive into how you view these relationships with the third parties, and if you're aware of that risk that you might be inheriting. And so we talk about things such as how do you pick these third parties that you work with? How do you create contract language? If they have some sort of breach, are they going to let you know? If they have some sort of vulnerability they're running in their systems, are they going to let you know about that? Do they have to let you know? Probably not. But if you bring that out early on in the engagement and that relationship with them, there's a chance, right, that they'll let you know, and at least you're aware of that risk. Maybe the way you have your infrastructure set up, how it's segmented, et cetera. Those are things that you could protect yourself with and working with that third party. But yeah, and then we go into how that relationship could evolve as technology changes, business processes, et cetera. And then finally, if you want to terminate that, have you set yourself up to be not, let's say, have any losses or some sort of let's say damage from the relationship, or maybe you just lose efficiency? Are you prepared for that if you do have to terminate that relationship? And so yeah, again, that's just one example of one of the assessments, but also how we're aware that third parties, even if you're not that CI owner, we can still work with you, because you might be able to affect another organization that is a
Yeah.
large CI.
Yeah, that's that, man. What a great answer. So Ruth, yes, we can do that that assessment for small businesses through CISA. Vendor risk assessments is the terminology we use inside Center's walls for a bit what you're describing there. And Todd Smith and Roddy on an earlier session were talking about that scrutiny you put towards your vendor practice today that you may not have done prior. I was lucky enough to get to talk to one of our CIOs 2 days ago, who said despite the maturity of their organization, they've ballooned to, I believe, around 4,000 employees. They're unhappy with the maturity in their vendor practice management system, and that's one of their big focuses. Even if you did that though, gotta admit, Felix, and you found out there that your vendor is using good programs like maybe Azure or AWS or CrowdStrike, you would say, good, those are good groups. But they can still be the ones that bring that group down, that brings you down, that brings your customer down, and your customer is not going to blame CrowdStrike, they're going to blame you. So you still got to look at that. How much are we willing to put up with? What are we willing to deal with, and how much preventative measures or active systems do we have to figure out how to plan for to not have that occur to us? Um, Another one that comes up all the time is passwordless. Are we at a point where MFA's on everything, and I can go back to weak or no passwords, just facial recognition and thumbprints?
Yeah, it definitely sounds like that. That would be nice, James. It would definitely save me time on some of the systems I have to access and what I go
Yeah,
through to
for
authenticate.
sure.
But um, I think it's definitely, gonna be in the horizon. However, there's some hurdles. For one, there's a cost involved to that. How much is our organizations willing to pay for those authentication methods? Also, just overall training. So from the end user side, it sounds pretty straightforward, but I've been part of and I've seen some of these implementations struggle a little bit, mostly because again they haven't thought about the actual practical side, biometrics, for example, and what that looks like, the user, getting confused, getting frustrated because it's not working the first time they try it. And so that user training. And so that plus some other things, I think it's something that is just going to take time. Organizations that I've seen be pretty successful at it are taking a phased approach. So maybe they start off with their IT departments, more of their tech savvy type of personnel, make sure that's worked out. And then after that, they keep deploying that throughout the organization, um, and just keep phasing out that authentication process.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think you're right. The critical applications, the things that truly are going to run the business, we may never see complex passwords leave them, but maybe more and more things turn into single sign-on or fewer frequency on MFA. But yeah, I agree. It's funny though, how every year I feel like that's the big topic is passwordless is the future. Not in the foreseeable short-term future, at least in my world. Um, we had earlier a group on that was talking about incident response. That was a group of Tetra Defense. They were acquired by Arctic Wolf. One of the founders of Tetra and now works at Arctic Wolf was saying that you got to spend your first dollar on highly secure, immutable backups. When you look at a small business with a shrinking budget right now, but an increasing demand of cybersecurity needs, where do you spend your first dollar? What's the most foundational line that you say, if you don't have this in place, spend your first dollar there?
Yeah, so I start off with five basic practices. And then after those basic practices, we actually have a process of kind of figuring that out. But let me start off with those five basic practices. Yeah, basically, if you focus on having strong passwords, and if you focus on implementing MFA, and you remove any internet-facing devices that don't need to be internet accessible, um, also if you patch, update your systems, and then if you have backups on that critical data that you need, that's a good start. And for small businesses, a lot of those they could maybe even do some of that work themselves. Maybe need a YouTube video. I don't know, just depending what their services they're actually providing. But that's a good start. Now, if you want to go a little bit more into, I would say mature practices and having a little bit of a better strategy, or at least a more well-defined strategy. So that's actually something that I do a lot. So we have an introductory assessment. It's called the cybersecurity performance goals, and that was created in early 22 between CISA and NIST. So NIST, National Institute of Science and Technology Standards, and basically what they did is they have a cybersecurity framework that they recommend, especially large organizations adopt. However, they came up with one assessment that focuses on 38 practices from that assessment. And so some of those practices, a lot of them are strategic. So do you have basically like an incident response plan? Do you manage and patch your vulnerabilities? Do you have somebody who is responsible for cybersecurity at your organization? Sounds like very basic, simple things. However, again, it gets overlooked, and this is where you get those cracks that these malicious actors take advantage of, and then they infiltrate, all these different networks. But furthermore, what's great about that assessment is that it actually categorizes each practice. Again, I mentioned there's 38 by what's estimated to be high cost, low cost, and medium cost, high complexity, low complexity, what's going to take a lot of work, and then also impact. And so organizations really, I think, like using that as a starter because they can just based off of about a 1 hour assessment, get a pretty good idea into what they can start focusing those efforts on. Limited budgets. Where are they going to put their money in? Staff. Do they need to have full-time employees? What areas are they going to focus on? What skill sets do they need? And so on and so forth. It just kind of gives them that good starting point into again improving just their cybersecurity programs posture.
Yeah, that was solid. We talk inside center walls of 4 things, not 5. That was really interesting how you started that. Our 4 things are clean copy of data, which kind of aligns with that immutable backup program. It's also identity. How are your users accessing data from where? Then proactive threat hunters, the whole MDR, EDR strategy, visibility to security gaps for vulnerability scanning, pen testing, segmentation testing, and then incident response plan. And each of those are pretty big chapters, right? They all have a lot of sub bullets. But those are the mini version that we do of that cybersecurity performance goals. Is that the term you used? That's
Yes.
our miniature version of it right there, and just a fact-finding discovery meeting. I want to bring this to kind of a landing. We're running short on time. Give me just the yes or no to Tamara's question. She asked about if CISA members participate in white hat testing. Do y'all have hackers on staff that will do engagement
Yes.
if needed? Cool.
Hmm.
That's probably a really neat team meeting to sit on. I would imagine they've got a ton of stories. We started off the session before this talking about more on a personal side, the favorite movie or show centered around IT or specifically cybersecurity. Do you have a favorite show or movie, let's say other than The Matrix, on
Yeah.
something cybersecurity related?
Yeah, you can't go wrong with the Matrix. Early on, I remember seeing Swordfish. That was one of my
Yeah.
first movies related to
John
cybersecurity.
Travolta and Halle Berry, right?
Yeah, uh-huh. And also, but recently, I got to say, Mr. Robot was a good show that I watched, but it got too real at times, and so I stopped watching it. But that's another good show.
So it's funny. Tim Tran, one of my favorite guys here at the office, he chimed in with that movie and the movement of all the things going on. My brain translated that to iRobot, the Will Smith movie, and I was like, well, that's a surprise. I had to go back and double check it. It was Mr. Robot, and I don't think I've seen it yet. I need to go find that one. That'll be the one I go hunt down tonight and watch. Alex is agreeing with you. He says Mr. Robot. Yeah, Tim. Thank you, Tim. Um, Felix, thank you for your time. I have a feeling based on the number of topics I still have that we didn't have time to touch on and some of the internal chat I'm getting on Teams right now, we could have done this for another hour likely. So I may be sending you an email with a couple other topics, or perhaps if time allows for us, maybe we do a refresh of this and do it for another group if you're open to it.
Yeah, definitely, James. Again, as an advisor, my whole goal is just helping increase the cybersecurity posture, of the
Yep.
area. And so, yeah, through conversations like this, I think it's a good way to start, so that everybody, listening can have these type of same conversations within their organization.
Felix, I don't know how many vices you like, but my favorite vice is whiskey. So the way we do our events, Felix, is they're almost always webinar based. We have this habit every year. We do 2 big events. One is around steaks, and the other is around whiskey. We've bought a barrel, guys, from Milam and Green, rinse and repeat from previous years. once at Ranger Creek, once at Still Austin, now Milam and Green. To the audience, if y'all haven't heard of Milam and Green yet, you need to. 2023 up and coming Spirit Store of the Year. Milam's got that award under their belt. Their founder, who's joining us, Heather Green, she got Master Blender of the Year. This is an up and comer off just west of Austin in Blanco, Texas. So be on the lookout for that invite. It'll be our next opportunity to sit down and talk about cybersecurity and tech. We are putting a blend or a twist on this centered around AI. How AI is taking over your business because your employees have brought it in, how AI is helping you, whether you know it or not, in your IT department, and how AI is really the core of what's coming after you today, and how that's impacting your organization. So definitely one not to miss. Those who attend, we're going to get you a bottle of that from that Barrel Select, as long as you are within our service area. If you're someone who's well outside of Texas, Oklahoma, and you want to attend, reach out to us. Let us know. We'll do our best to make that work. There's limits on how we can ship spirits, so we got to stay within the law. Don't want CISA to hear that we did that. So if y'all have any questions on the event or the things we talked about today, please let us know. We're happy to continue the conversation at any point. So yeah, thank you all for attending and spending your day with us. And Felix, thanks again for spending your time with us today and the information you shared with the group. Really appreciate it.